Hello everyone, this is Remleiz from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of Adeptus Podcastus. Joining me as always is Tactica Imperialis.
Hello everyone. Sorry, bad start, voice crack. Hello.
Still ill, are we?
No, I'm better, I've just been teaching all day.
Fair enough. And joining us as our guest this week is a YouTuber who focuses more on the Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar side of things, but we won't hold that against them. Sorry, joke had to be made. Oh, fine, I'll go, fine. I would always swear, but I don't want to get demonetized at this point early in the video. But anyway, joining us as our guest this week is Loremaster of Sotek.
Hello. How are y'all?
Hello. How is everyone doing today?
I'm doing...
Yeah, I can't complain.
Pretty well myself. Doing good.
Good to hear, good to hear. Right, so, in the news this week, there is a fair amount, I do believe.
Yeah, I just went scrolling through the last 2 weeks of Warhammer Community, and I think I've opened about 15 tabs. So, yeah. I think where I'm going to start, it might be an odd place to start, is just with the PSA stuff, really. So, I know obviously we're very literacy focused over here on Adeptus Podcastus. And the Black Library have opened their open submissions competition, which is now up and running until the 11th of February. A 5 to 10,000 word story, but all that's required at the moment is a 500 word extract and a 100 word synopsis. So they'll ask you to submit, and then they'll select a few to expand them into full novellas.
That's super exciting.
The theme is Successor Space Marine chapters. So second founding onwards, including the unknowns. No homebrews, no chaos, no Grey Knights or Death Watch or Legion of the Damned, and it must be set during the Indomitus Crusade.
Aww.
So yes, that's what's going on. Also, stories must be in English, and you only get one go. So good luck, and I hope that if you're interested in doing this kind of thing, you get a good go at it. And I know we've talked with other authors in the past about some advice for people, so feel free to check back on those old episodes and see what they had to say.
So when they say no chaos, does that mean you can't have a chapter full to chaos during the course of the story, or...?
Devotion to the Ruinous Powers is forbidden. Statement.
Devotion to the Ruinous Powers is forbidden, but being a renegade isn't. Interesting.
I would check it with the Black Library team.
Yeah, it does seem to note that it's okay if they have a shaky relationship with the Imperium, but not outright heresy, I guess.
Right. So we can do more stories regarding the Soul Drinkers then. Interesting. I mean, let's be honest, these Soul Drinkers could use some more love, especially considering we had that one novella of them, with the Primaris version of the Soul Drinkers. We want to see more of that, please. So someone get on it.
Yeah. The other PSA, more for tournament organisers, is the World Championships of Warhammer. So they've been doing the US Open series over the last couple of years, and they are going to make that more global. The event will still be held in the US, out in Atlanta, Georgia, on November the 16th to the 19th. But in terms of qualifying players, there are actually going to be the option for not just things like a US Open, Warhammer Fest, LVO, Adepticon, Nova, etc. You can also fill out a form and apply for your local tournaments to become qualifying events. So if you run tournaments in your area and have done for a while, it's quite large, or you run a con in your area, then you can fill out a form to be considered for qualifier status for the Warhammer World Championships. And obviously this will all be live streamed at the end, and etc, etc. So plenty going on, and there will be 170 qualifiers, or more than that, available at the moment.
Fair enough. Before we carry on, I just realised I've been incredibly rude and didn't actually give Sotek a chance to actually properly introduce himself. So, to those who may not be aware of your work, Sotek, would you like to give us a brief rundown on your stuff?
Oh, sure, I don't mind.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I just realised I've been incredibly rude.
You're all good. I'm Loremaster of Sotek. I do a lot of stuff on YouTube and Twitch. I stream on Twitch, and then I put like lore videos or just videos about what's going on in especially like the fantasy community over on YouTube. by a fair number of folks. I'm kind of considered one of the, I guess, premier lore people when it comes to Warhammer Fantasy, and I do know quite a bit about Age of Sigmar as well. I keep very up to pace on that because it's basically just the fantasy universe just much later in the future. And I know little bits and pieces about 40k, though I'm definitely much more of a casual fan when it comes to 40k. But yeah, I work with a lot of different groups and companies that are doing things in the Warhammer universe. I've worked with, or I've been involved with the Chaos Rising fan movie that's being made, and I've been very heavily involved with Creative Assembly and the Total War Warhammer games and all that stuff.
Oh, nice.
And if there's anything Warhammer Fantasy related, I'm usually involved as much as I can be. Running a campaign of the tabletop roleplay game on the Twitch channel right now, and we've been having a lot of fun with that. So yeah, just get really involved whenever it's Warhammer Fantasy related.
So when you say you're one of the premier lore experts in Warhammer Fantasy, you could say that you're a lore master.
So,
Hey.
Something, so, yeah. I could see how you might tie those threads together. I don't know about that myself, but
Yeah. Why Sotek?
I mean, isn't it
Just
channel
out of-
name, so.
Sorry. Why Sotek out of interest? Obviously, Sotek being the snake god of the lizard men. When I think Loremaster, and bear in mind where I'm coming from here, I played elves and still play elves. When I think Loremaster, I think elves. So just why Sotek? Just curious.
So funny enough, it was kind of a situation where my quote unquote career, I guess, started on the Total War forums, where for my account name, I had just been the Prophet of Sotek, because Tehenwin is my favorite character in Warhammer Fantasy, and I've always been a very big Lizardman player and all this stuff. But when I left the forums, I was making a YouTube channel. It occurred to me that I probably shouldn't call the YouTube channel Prophet of Sotek, because that's like an actual character in the setting. I should change it a little bit to make it something that would, like, I wanted to change it to be something that people would go, oh, it's going to be a Warhammer lore channel, while still keeping it recognizable for all the people that knew me from the forums. So I was like, Loremaster of Sotek, that'll work. And yeah, I just sort of landed there.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the other thing that would probably have come up, because I did this, for about one day, Tactica Imperialis was not called Tactica Imperialis. And pretty much no one will know this. The original name of the channel was like Holy Bolter Wargaming or something like that. And I made my first video under that name and uploaded it. And then I looked in the recommended video, even though I'd done all the tags and stuff like that, and they were all like religion based. And I was like, so I was like, actually, no, I'm going to change this. So I changed it. And then you'd have probably found the same thing. Would have been a lot of your recommended stuff under your videos would have been, at least early on when you weren't fully established, would have been religious rather than Warhammer.
Yeah. Oh man. The algorithm being like, holy, I see where you're going. It's like, no, that's not where I'm going at all.
Not at all. So I'm assuming, being the Loremaster of the old world, that you are very much keeping tabs on Warhammer the Old World, because I got an update this week looking at the Empire and where it stands in the setting.
Oh, yes. That was a super exciting update. There's a lot of really, really awesome gems in there. And it's also really just nice to get articles. Sometimes we go months without any news about the old world, and we're now on year 5 since they announced it. So
yeah, it was 2019, January 2019. So yeah, 4. No, 2020. Yeah. So 3.
So it's been very, very exciting to see it coming. Obviously, someone that grew up with Warhammer Fantasy, and it's my favorite setting out of anything in the world. The End Times was hard on a lot of us that really, really loved fantasy, and I was fortunate enough to eventually come around on Age of Sigmar. Obviously, I didn't like it when it started, but I love it now, and so I didn't necessarily need Warhammer to come back. But the fact that it is, and we're going back in time to a fairly unexplored part of the setting, is super exciting, and there's so much good stuff going on with it. And yeah, I to say that I have my ear to the ground for even like the slightest hints of rumors or leaks or anything on top of the official news would be an understatement.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's one of those, if I picked up fantasy and played it as a bit of a side piece with a couple of friends a few times, but it wasn't until Sigmar that some of my 40k gaming group actually gave it a look. And so that was where our game group sort of developed into fantasy, was through Sigmar. Like, I know a little bit about the old world and things like that, but it's not a setting I really got immersed in, or a rule set that I really had enough exposure to fall in love with. Like, but having now got my hands on Sigmar and seeing what they're doing with the cities of Sigmar and all the armies they've done like that, and they got an update this week as well, by the way, which looked really cool. I'm really interested to go back to old world with not a child's pair of eyes, where I'm not like this 14-year-old who barely knows how to play 40k properly because you're playing it based on what you and your mates think is the rules, based on what the rulebook says. Now that I actually have an understanding of rules and will play it properly, and it's been refined, rebuilt, I really want to give it a crack and see how it actually plays.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see which rule set, or what the rule set ends up being, because they keep talking about how they're kind of combining like the best rules from all the different editions, and it's a very different game from anything we have nowadays, because rank and file is just such a different tactic set.
Yeah,
but I am very, very curious to see which, because I mean, even just looking from like 5th edition to 8th edition, those two editions are so far apart from one another that they practically felt like different games. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they kind of try and meld everything together. Yeah,
I only got to play 8th edition, and the criticism that I always saw leveled at fantasy was it's too hard, it's too complicated, and it doesn't work at small points costs. Like 500, 1,000 point pick up and play games just were not feasible for fantasy in terms of making the game play well. Now, I don't know if that was a fair criticism, or that was something that the veterans and the people who actually played it properly were aware of and acknowledged and felt was the same. But that was the way it was always perceived, is it's too hard, it's too slow, and it doesn't work properly at small games because everything's too bloody squishy.
Yeah, well, and no, I think in 8th edition that would be a fair criticism. 6th edition and 7th edition, I think, were much better for smaller type games. 8th edition kind of adopted this idea of like, they really wanted people to take hordes. Like, they wanted you to have these giant units and to really have tons and tons of stuff on the table. So it kind of led to Magic becoming like significantly more powerful, but Magic wouldn't scale down. So you'd go into a small point game and you still have all these like really devastating spells, and a lot of other things like that. And it also didn't help that 8th edition, there were some things about it that I really loved, but 8th edition was definitely during that time in Games Workshop's history where it felt like the rules were being purposely designed, where they would be like, okay, so these things were really weak in 7th edition and these things were really strong. So let's flip that. Let's make the weak things very powerful and the powerful things very weak. So people have to buy the things they haven't been buying before. And it definitely left kind of a weird, because like in 6th and 7th edition, cavalry was very powerful. You could, line up, if you hit a unit of infantry in the flank or the rear with a cavalry charge, it would like completely disrupt them and absolutely destroy them, which made sense. But it was a really popular strategy. And then in 8th edition, they introduced these really weird rules where if the rank and file unit just had more ranks, which wasn't hard to do, a cavalry charge into them really wouldn't do anything. Like, you'd get some kills, but you wouldn't have the ability to like break the unit, which was the whole point behind cavalry. So it made cavalry completely worthless. So most people ended up shelving their cavalry units, and being forced to buy like these massive armies of infantry, which of course meant buying massive amounts of models, which is a very noticeable issue in 8th edition.
Right, yeah, I see it. It's a bit like they did with 40k, where in 5th edition, the assault phase, for 4th edition, especially in 5th edition, the assault phase and parking lots was king. And then in 6th, they flipped it. They introduced the hull point system, and vehicles were suddenly made out of tissue paper. They introduced Overwatch, which is stand and shoot, but it was way better than stand and shoot in many ways. And then gave it to Tau, who could overwatch each other, and it became lunacy on toast. And they've spent the last 6th and 7th edition wrenching back control from the shooting phase to try and make vehicles more worth taking, to make assault armies actually usable. And it's true, that was the time in Games Workshop's life where they were just flipping the rules to flip you the bird.
Yeah, so I'm very curious to see how things are gonna land. It really feels like, from the amount of time they're putting into it and the amount of effort, and like I've heard really promising things from like kind of back behind door rumors and stuff like that they're really trying to make a great game first and foremost, which I really hope is the case. Because I mean, I loved fantasy, but like every edition had problems. But you know, it's true, the rules were very complex. Like, it was not a simple game. There are a lot of rules, so I'm curious how they're going to try and tackle that issue this go around.
Yeah, I remember when demons got introduced as a standalone army in one of the editions of Fantasy, and they were so broken that shortly after demons got their own army book, they basically released a brand new edition of Fantasy just to fix how broken demons were.
Yeah, the 7th edition Demons of Chaos book is beyond infamous.
It's a bit like 3rd edition Chaos Space Marines, isn't it? For 40k, where it was so broken that to reboot 3rd.
Yeah. I mean, I remember prior to when the 3rd edition Chaos Codex came out, and Thousand Suns Terminators were absolutely broken because the original rules for them is like, Thousand Tzeentch Mark Terminators were immune to strength 4 or lower weapons.
What?
Yeah. Like they literally just, that was their power from the Mark of the Chaos, just immune. So good luck, Imperial Guard.
Demons came out, and 7th edition was the very first edition where they introduced the concept of, so it used to be that all demons and forest spirits and like those magical type creatures would have a 6-up ward save, which was a 6-up ignore all forms of damage essentially, but it only worked against,
we would call it in 40k.
Yeah, it only worked against non-magical attacks. So like spells, magic weapons, or creatures that had magical attacks could ignore it. But in 7th edition, they introduced the Demons of Chaos book, and they said, okay, well, instead of that, now what we're going to do is that the demons have a 5-up invulnerable save, and nothing can stop it. Like, it no longer is interrupted by magic. And then to make things worse, they were like, oh, by the way, many Nurgle units also have regeneration on top of that. So in order to wound a demon of Nurgle unit, you had to get through the 5-up ward save and then the 4-up regeneration save. They got to roll for both of them. And if they passed any of those, they ignored the damage. And it was
but here's the hilarious thing. That is exactly the state that demons were ported into 40k in like 5th edition, was 5-up invulnerable save across the board, and invulnerable saves back then could not be ignored because mortal wounds didn't exist. And Nurgle had feel no pain, which was usually a 5-up. It could be buffed to a 4-up on certain units. So 5-up and then a 4-up save was what the demons in 40k had, and they never broke the game. And also, none of them set up on the board in 40k 5th. They all turned up on the board by Deep Strike on turn 1. And it wasn't broken. That just shows you the power level of like 40k versus fantasy, that a 5-up followed by a 4-up broke fantasy, and 40k just went, yeah, whatever.
I wouldn't necessarily say how powerful 40k things are in comparison. I think it's just more a case of, in 40k, you have more ways to tackle it.
Yeah, fair point.
And because there's more ways to tackle it, it's not as big an issue because there's a way out of it, essentially. Whereas, like, in fantasy, to get rid of, like, the regen, correct me if I'm wrong, Sotek, it's been a while since I played fantasy, but, like, if a regen unit, like, took damage from a flaming attack, they lost the ability to regen for the rest of the game, didn't they?
Yes, but, no, not the rest of the game, just for that wound.
Just that wound, okay.
And maybe back then it was the wounds after, but I'm pretty sure it was just that wound. But it was also kind of a double-edged sword, or it made it very difficult in like the tournament setting, because there were also a very high amount of magic items that existed that would give you like a 2+ ward save against fire attacks that you could put on any character in the game. So it's like, do I take fire attacks? And then that person could be like, oh, well, I'm just going to throw this character who's basically immune to fire into that unit you have that causes that. And we also, the problem with the demons was that mainly was that, Warhammer didn't really have a lot of shooting, and our combat was very specific in that like only the front 2 ranks of a unit can fight. And there were really specific rules about engagements. So it was more that like you only had, at most you were throwing 20 attacks in a combat phase at this demon unit, and statistically they would ignore a third, and then they would ignore a third of those attacks, followed up by another half of those attacks. And demons also had really annoying abilities, like their leadership was really good, and if they rolled high enough on their leadership, they would all return from the dead, like the unit would just heal back to full health. And
so they caused fear and stuff like that as well.
Oh yeah, fear and terror was super nasty, especially back in those days, because terror was a lot stronger than it was in later editions, because it was just by being near a terror causer, a unit would panic and flee off the table. And
with an 8, wasn't it?
There was just a lot that, and demons kind of just had access to a lot of very strange things all at once. And the bad thing about 7th edition was that, they didn't really do FAQs back then. So instead of, fixing the demon book, they just decided, oh, well, since the demons are so overpowered, let's just make it where every book that comes after them is equally overpowered. So like the Lizardmen came out, and I remember being elated when 7th edition Lizards came out because of how obscenely overpowered they were. Back when like the Slaane's Mage Priest could cast practically an infinite number of spells that were just obscenely strong. And there was like I would love, like, there was a spell we had where you'd basically pick a unit and you'd cast the spell and it would be practically impossible to stop with a Slann. And you'd say, okay, because I cast this spell called Dwellers Below, every single model in that unit now has to roll a strength test. So they'd roll a d6.
And every single one that fails dies. I love that spell.
Yeah.
And I used to use it with Throne of Vines, and it was bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah,
yes, it was
so
bullshit.
It's like, yeah, like we do that. Or the Lizardmen, my favorite miscast became very, very painful in those later editions, where it's like, if you miscast a spell, you could very easily have your wizard explode into a 5-inch template, and the wizard instantly dies, and he probably kills everyone under the template. So usually the expensive bodyguard unit he had. And the Lizardmen, they were like, oh, hey, here's a 35-point item where if you miscast on a 2+, you could give the miscast to an enemy wizard. So the Slann, we would purposefully miscast on turn 1 and give the miscast to the enemy's strongest wizard to make him blow up.
Oh, God.
Bullshit.
Or they gave us a sword that if you bop somebody with it, for every time you hit them, so you put it on an Old Blood, he had 5 attacks. He hit on 3s or 4s. For every time he hit, they had to roll a leadership check, and if they failed a single leadership check, they instantly died regardless of how many wounds they had or any defenses.
Bullshit.
Like, that's the kind of stuff that was running around in 7th edition.
Oh, I don't know if you ever got any issues of White Dwarf back during 5th edition. 5th edition fantasy, because there was an article, basically the quest for the Invincible Army, right? And basically, like, one of the writers for White Dwarf, he basically came up with this army called like Lord Beardy Slan's Temple of Nonsense, whatever. And the task was to come up with an army that would beat it. And like the winning army idea was like, it was like a goblin army that contained something stupid like 35 snotling pump wagons.
What the fuck?
But like there was another one, like it was a Wood Elf and Bretonnian army where every unit and character were on flying creatures like Warhawks, Pegasi, dragons, and basically turn 1, just fly high, wait for us to gain turn 6, charge.
I mean, the
problem with that was like, oh, I have to storm banner. Fuck you.
At least there's comfort to be found in that. Pretty much no matter what edition, there was absolutely cheesy BS that was going on, but definitely was more noticeable in certain later editions.
Yeah, there was also a Skaven army where like had something like 10 warlock engineers, but they were all mounted on cockatrices.
Yeah,
So,
but
like-
just for the record, let's not pretend 40k was any bloody better with Taudar, Decurions, free transports for every single unit in your Space Marine army, and all the bollocks that ran around in 7th edition before they hard rebooted it. 7th was as broken a mess as Fantasy 8th. I love 7th, and yes, that's commenter. I will keep talking about old editions, and no, that doesn't mean I need to go back and play them. I'm going to have entitled to have my opinion, thank you.
Can we talk about old? Oh, we're talking about old editions. Can we talk about 2nd?
Rem, I wasn't fucking born.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, I'm not
second
pretending that
edition
2nd
was
edition
broken.
that was bullshit as well. Warhammer's a broken game, straight up.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, it's a competitive game. I don't care how well your game is. If you have, what are they called, Timmies in your community, like they will find a way to break it.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of
Absolutely.
time.
Though Games Workshop.
No, just James who did it all. He's responsible. He's doing it all.
Yeah.
James Workshop is.
But, yeah, I've seen him on that phone call when they released the Caradron Overlords. I love that video so much.
But they are trying to tackle it in terms of balancing and things like that. So there's been a series of points changes. Oh, free stuff for Chaos Space Marines. Thank you. That's good. Gene Stealer Cults have got a review of their options and a balanced data slate. And the big thing that someone told me about... Oh my god, hang on a minute. My friends didn't tell me this.
What?
Armor of Contempt's gone.
Oh, I heard about that on Twitter.
Ooh.
So that's the BS of Space Marines, and most guard tanks got to ignore -1 AP all the bloody time, and it was stupid and annoying.
Tell me how you really feel.
No, genuinely, as a Tau player who basically relies on -1 AP to do anything, it's just, ugh.
You play Tau? That's so cool. I thought y'all were a myth. Because it's so rare to meet a Tau player, I feel like.
I mean, what do you think their display picture is?
Oh, wait, hang on a minute. Sorry, I think it might just be that guard tanks have lost Armor of Contempt. I don't know if they've actually given it to Space Marines or not. Never mind. Sorry, I might have read that wrong and it's only applied to guard. But something I did hear was apparently they've completely reworked flyers and aircraft because... Apparently, and I can only speak on apparently because I don't know enough about game balance to really comment. Here we go. Aircraft units now have to start in reserve, meaning that bombers cannot do anything until turn 3. Basically. Because they go into strategic reserves, they can't start on the board. They have to arrive on turn 2, and they count as moving when they do so. Because apparently, according to one of my friends, a tactic that people had was just was just a few aircraft, bombers, whiz them over on turn 1, drop your bombs, do a massive amount of damage, then just sit there and wait to die because you've already done your job. But now you can't really do that because you can't actually drop your bomb until turn 3 and you've just got to sit there for a turn until you actually get to do anything. So yeah, it's just... little things. They've talked about bodyguard units now have just changed from can't target characters to can use lookout sir all the time. Indirect fire weapons have been mentioned as having -1 ballistic skill and you get +1 save against indirect fire, which is kind of interesting as a take. Is there anything here for orcs? They've talked about buggies. Oh, they've reworked War a bit. Okay. Oh god, they've reworked Montcar and Farsight Enclaves a little bit. Oh god, I need to read both of those. Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to need to read that later. In the meantime, I'm going to shush and we'll move on.
Yes, because as you know, with the whole Arcs of Omen thing coming along, there's introducing things like boarding actions.
Yep.
And Warhammer Community posted an article to prepare for your boarding actions. Here are some great novels detailing boarding actions. I say great novels in quotation marks because they put Battle for the Abyss on there.
That's the Battle of Fal, isn't it?
That's that absolutely terrible Horus Heresy novel, which everyone pretty much agrees is one of the worst in the series.
Oh dear.
But it's a great book for, boarding
please
actions.
buy. Don't worry about it, please buy.
The other books they got here are Warriors of Ultramar from the Uriel Ventress series, Death of Integrity, Dagobbo's Revenge, which was okay, Twice Did King Reign, which is a good book.
It
so
is.
We can give him a point for that. I've not read Warriors of Ultramar, so I can't comment on that.
Neither can I.
Farsight, Crisis of Faith, and Fabius Bell Clone Lord, both of which are good books. So,
both of which are good books, indeed.
So they got at the very least 3 out of 7.
Yeah. Alongside that literary preparation, you can also get some model-based preparation, as they have revealed 2 boarding patrol boxes to give you an idea of what a boarding actions army might look like. Space Marines get a box, of course they do, which is 10 regular intercessors, well, assault intercessors to be exact, 5 heavy intercessors, and what I believe is a new captain in Gravis armor with a bolter and chainsword.
We've seen that one before, haven't we?
Have we? I'm willing to be wrong.
It was that one that has that standalone kit that was released a while back, wasn't it?
I don't recall. Comments, help.
I'm pretty sure that was released before, but just not as a box set.
Yeah, possibly. The other one, though, is 10 Chaos Space Marines. 10 Chaos Space Marines, 20 cultists, and Abaddon. Just Abaddon.
Hang on, no. I count 5 Chaos Space Marines according to the picture.
The picture says 5, but the part, it should be, it's 5. Even though the bloody text says 10, it's 5.
Oh, good old Warhammer community. It's not the first time they get their own information wrong, is it?
Indeed. They also revealed a different box set for base game, like an Arcs of Omen base game, which is the Balefleet Battle Force. And if you play Chaos Space Marines in a Demon Kinney kind of way, this box is awesome because it's a new Demon Prince, the new one, 10 Possessed, a Helldrake, and 5 Terminators. This box is awesome if you play Chaos Space Marines that way. For me, I play them a sort of cultisty kind of way with Dark Apostle, Dark Commune, that kind of thing. But if you're playing Word Bearers or something like that, this is a fantastic box for you. And also, it's a box set that's got Terminators, a Helldrake, and a Demon Prince in it. Hello?
Yeah, looking at this Chaos Space Marine boarding patrol thing, I can't be the only one who thinks it's a huge wasted opportunity for this to not be Red Corsairs.
Yeah, but Abaddon's the protagonist.
I know, but considering the whole thing's about boarding actions and, the Red Corsairs are pirates, I feel it's a missed opportunity. It could have given us an opportunity for having a new Plastic Huron Blackheart, couldn't it? So
yeah, a new Plastic Huron would have been sick, but or even put Vashtor in here.
It would have been thematically appropriate as well for boarding stuff as well.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I do agree. It's a shame.
Imagine being the poor sap on the ship, whatever. Oh, I was just being boarded and it's bloody Abaddon. Oh, fuck.
Indeed.
You think he had better things to do rather than just boarding some random Imperial ship? Orchestrating his war against the Imperium or something, I don't know, or searching for some artifact, or getting stabbed by St. Celestine, but who knows?
Shrug. But
speaking of combat patrols, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're quite all right. While we're on the topic of Chaos Space Marine boxes, World Eater's Combat Patrol confirmed. It's the Lord on Juggernaut, 20 Berserkers, and 10 of the Jackal Cultists. And it's also worth noting that World Eaters can have as many Juggernaut Lords as they have HQ slots, rather than being limited to a single Chaos Lord per detachment like the regular Chaos Marines. Therefore, 2 boxes is actually a legal army, whereas in normal Chaos armies, it would not. I think, for me, it's a bit imbalanced in that you've got more Berserkers than Cultists, but...
Yeah, I was going to say, it's aren't they supposed to be the chaff?
They're the only mortals that can keep up. I see the argument both ways. I think Khorne Berserkers are the core of the army and should be treated as such. But I don't think I've ever seen a battle box that goes 20 Marines and 10 Cultists is the correct balance here.
Do you remember that Thousand Suns one where it was a Sorcerer, 5 Terminators and 20 Zangor?
Yes, that's still the box.
It's a stupid box. Because all that was, it's a leftover stock from that Thousand Suns versus Grey Knights box set.
Pretty much.
It's literally just the overstock from there, so we can't sell the box game. Fuck it, we'll just put them in a box. And speaking of stock they can't sell, loot boxes. Supply drops.
The bloody supply drops came back. I made a video on this a couple of years ago when they were first revealed, the supply drops. And I talked about it at the time and was like, I like the idea, but also, no.
Do those sell well?
I don't know. Actually,
apparently they did, because they've all sold out over here already. So,
well, I mean,
the 40k ones have sold out.
The 40k ones. Well, there's the 40k one, AOS Order, and then AOS Elves, which tells me everything I need to know. about exactly how valuable elves are to the Warhammer community, as well as underworlds. So in terms of like what's available, I'm actually going to have a look now and see if the supply drops are still around.
Now, from what I recall, these weren't actually made available in the US.
Yeah, we don't have them.
Because I think it's something to do with like your gambling laws or something, wasn't it?
I don't think so. I have no idea.
That's one of the things I heard. Apparently it's something to do with your gambling laws, because there's like no federal gambling laws, so state-by-state basis kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be that when it comes to stuff like that, like all the different states are going to have different like ways you have to do it or ways you have to label it and everything, and GW could have very well looked at that and been like, we're not going to bother.
Yeah, probably just too complex to like do it on a state-by-state basis. If they were an American company, they probably would do it, but you know, being the side of the pond instead, be like, nah, fuck it, let's have a cup of tea.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sure the American market does fine for them as far as getting rid of stuff. A lot of people try weird things over here. It's like a pride aspect of the American tabletop community. You always see someone out there trying to play an army that's got no hope, and they're like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
So I remember the last time I did supply drops, because it was like a weird mix, like, oh, here's some Space Wolf Thunderwolf Cavalry and a Dark Angel Primaris Lieutenant, just randomly mixed. It's like,
what's like just random stock stuff they're trying to clear out, isn't it?
It was basically just overstock, yeah.
I don't know, it's interesting. I'm curious what elves are in the elf one, because like
probably all of them.
It's like Idneth are they're okay, they're not amazing, so I could see Idneth being in there, but like Lumineth are pretty good. So I'd be kind of surprised to see like
Daughters of Cain, maybe.
Daughters of Cain are also very good. Well, Daughters of Cain are weird because they're hyper competitive, but it's only like very specific. It's a very specific like build. Like there are a lot of different units that aren't very competitive, so it's probably those units.
Yeah, it's as a Daughters, Lumineth, and Idoneth player, like Lumineth have always been a little bit nuts out the box. They've always felt nuts in terms of what they can do. Daughters were my glass nuke launcher, and I will always call them my glass nuke launcher, because if they hit, then you're dead. But if they're not really going to, about 75% of the time. Idneth, because they're just such a janky army to get your head around. Not because they're bad, they're just janky in terms of how you play them. It just didn't really work out, and I wouldn't be surprised, especially considering how many Idneth units aren't played. Looking at you, the entire Marty range. It's just... It's so frustrating. I play Marty armies, and they always suck.
It's funny. Idneth are the only army, because I haven't gotten to play in a few months, but last year I played in a lot of grand tournaments, and I was taking my Night Haunt everywhere I could. And Idneth were the one army that either I would completely table them or they would completely table me. And I only got tabled by an Idneth player once, but he was also like absolutely destroying the tournament he was at. I want to say it was right after their new book came out, and he was running a very heavy Namarti force, but he did this nasty thing where he teleported a significant amount of his army into your back line, and it was just, man, he was running so many priests, and he'd get off and he'd get off a curse, and the second he got off curse, it was bad. It was bad. Because those Namartis would have, like, their stats aren't amazing, but they would have enough. They'd had a lot of attacks, and they would have enough attacks that they would run up. And as long as they're getting sixes, that's mortal wounds coming in on you. And it's like, and you're just getting beat down. He was a very good player, though. He was a very, very good player.
You've got to be. To pilot an army like Idneth, you've got to be, because they're such a unique play style where you've basically you've got to win the game in one turn, but that turn is turn 3.
Yeah, it's definitely the strangest army in that it's like, yeah, you could play them, but there's an army timer that you have to play around.
Yeah, it's janky. Right. So where are we going next? So they revealed the anniversary miniatures for store anniversaries this week, and they've gone double dwarf, actually. So the 40k miniature that is available is a Carl of the Leagues of Votan named Yot Grendok. I am sorry for probably completely butchering the pronunciation of that. And for AOS, it is a Caradron Overlord that I really, really like, an Admiral Torque Lenson, who carries around a little model of an Arcanaut Ironclad, and it's adorable.
This bath toy. I can't be the only one who thinks this is a missed opportunity for them to have the exact same pose.
I mean, yeah, they could have done, actually. They probably could have got away with it.
If I recall correct, yeah, that I really like this Caradron model.
It is very cool.
Yeah, I wish that was the special character instead of the Monopoly man that they have.
Oh, the one with the top hat.
Yeah, the top hat special character. I hate that design so much. it's a little too over the top.
I mean, I think it works well with the whole steampunk aesthetic, so.
It does. It like, he has mustache guns. Like, he literally has guns that shoot out of his mustache.
For a minute, I thought you said he literally has mustache that shoots guns.
No. He's got like a
shoots guns out of his mustache.
Yeah, I forget what the gun is exactly. I can't remember if it's a laser or if it's steam powered, but he has these little holes at the end of his twisted mustache that shoot people.
God's sake.
Unfortunately, he barely ever turns up. Like, nobody uses him, and he also never shows up in the narrative, which is kind of a shame, because it's like, if you have the character, you should use him, but...
Does he ever say at any point, I must ask you a question?
You know, so far he hasn't, but that would honestly make me like him a lot more. If he leaned into it.
Yeah. Though, despite how good the Caradron model is, I think the Horus Heresy took Model of the Week for me, whereas Exodus stepped out of the shadows.
Oh, is that the sniper guy?
The sniper guy. This model is really, really cool. Maybe it's just because it's a character I've known about for a long time and done a lot of research on for my video on the Alpha Legion all those years ago. Maybe it's because, you know, Space Marine Sniper in the Heresy is not a thing you see very often. Or maybe it's just because it's an Alpha Legion character that's actually, you know, present and unique and is not just another I am Alfarius. It's just a really cool model with so many cool little intricate details, and I hope the Alpha Legion players are really happy with it.
You say that Space Marine Snipers aren't really a thing you see, but did you, like, forget the recon squads?
Yes.
Because they have basically, like, sniper bolters.
Okay, characters with snipers, then. Like, sniper heroes, there's the Vindicare Assassin, and that's it, pretty much.
I'm sorry, I will not have you disrespect Stumper Muckscart, thank you very much. The Rattling Sniper hero from 2nd edition, Codex Imperial Guard. Stumper Muckscart is a hero, I will not see him slandered.
Also, I'm talking predominantly about Heresy and Space Marines here. I
don't care. He is a hero who has a sniper rifle.
Yes, because I'm aware I'm missing out the Eldari character who has one as well, the Illic Night Spear. I'm aware he exists as well. It's just like, I don't know. Exodus is just a really cool character in my book, even though we know basically nothing about him. It's just a really, really cool mini, at least for me.
He is, yeah.
And I mean, the gun, it's either Strength 7, it's basically an AP2 rapid fire gun. And AP2 means it ignores all armor while on rapid fire mode at Strength 7 with Sunder and Pinning. Or it can have an execution shot, which is obviously a sniper, and it means it's also brutal if he didn't move as well. And it's like, ow, and it's an auto weapon, whatever that means. Just oof.
It means...
Yes, I'm aware of what that means, thank you. But no, it's just a really cool character for me. I just think it's really cool.
Also, I wonder how many people saw this and, seeing the name of Exodus, immediately thought of the song War is My Shepherd by Exodus. Banger tune, by the way. If you haven't listened to that song, go and listen to it now. It's excellent. Yes, I can talk about my 80s thrash metal, thank you very much.
No one's stopping you.
Yeah, really, by all means.
Though if you want something, well, not quite 80s, but 90s, they decided to bring Yarrick back.
As a made-to-order miniature, but I am happy the fact they're bringing back his second edition model as made-to-order. Yes, please. Because it's such glorious nostalgia. It's a shame that the other made-to-order one would be in Finecast.
Yes, so you've got classic Yarrick.
Which is metal.
The recently retired Yarrick, Old Creed, Severina Rain, who I didn't even realise they'd stopped selling. I just assumed it was just another Commissar model these days.
No, it was like a limited edition thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it was for Black Library Celebration, wasn't it?
Yes, you're right. I
think so,
as well as some old Commissars, including the Lord Commissar. And I remember going on a bit of a rant about the new Commissar that they've done and how boring it was.
It's so boring.
And this is the model that I can... The metal 5th edition Lord Commissar is the one that I consider like the gold standard of how to do a Commissar. With the power sword and the bolt pistol. For me, that's the gold standard.
Mm.
I mean, I know Severina Rain is better sculpted and all that, but to me is...
Even the one that's got like the power fist and the power sword, just resting the sword on his shoulder, like, behind his head, just looking out just sternly, even that's better than the new one. Just because it has more character.
Yeah.
The new one's just some boring guy just standing there looking mopey in a trench coat.
Absolutely.
That's buttoned up. So he looks more like a chef.
It's really boring.
It is really boring.
There's also a couple of classic Inquisitors. I don't know when they're from, but, they exist.
3rd edition, looks like.
Mm.
I think the one in the red armour, I'm pretty sure that is a 3rd edition sculpt.
That makes sense looking at the jank of it, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like something that would have come out in the very first Demon Hunter Codex.
Yeah, probably.
With his fuzzy cloak.
Yeah, and...
Why am I finding this so funny? I don't know why.
Yeah. While we're on the guard, though, there's actually going to be Uncadian upgrade sprue. I know we've got Uncadian shock troops, I know. They're also doing Cadian upgrade kits with full models in them.
An upgrade kit with
I've heard about that, where you can build 3 or 4 extra guys out of it if you wanted to.
I don't know how many copies you get, but looking at the bits that they've shown, there's enough for 3. I think there's 3. Looking at this, there's a new tank commander model in there, or armored division officer. Sorry, but basically tank commander that goes with the Rogel Dawn. A dedicated medic, a wounded trooper who's got a bandaged head and a bandaged arm and all of that, and a map reader. Reading an actual fucking map.
And a gravestone.
As you do.
Because you're going to be burying all those
technically
guardsmen.
Guard.
Because you're going to be burying all those guardsmen when you play them against the new Demon Prince Angron model.
Just a few.
So
no, it's a cool kit.
If you don't mind me asking, how are y'all feeling about actual full-on 40k fans? How are y'all feeling about the Arcs of Omen and all that stuff coming up?
Kind of indifferent at the moment, in honesty, because I'm just thinking, is this actually going to go anywhere, or is it going to end up being like Psychic Awakening, where it just end up being a big pile of nothing in the end?
Yeah, it's as you say, Psychic Awakening was, oh no, psychic events are happening and all sorts, and it's affecting the orcs, it's affecting the Tau, it's affecting the Blood Angels, and it was a giant damp squib. The Orcs Psychic Awakening book had nothing to do with the Great War and all of that. It was about Gazkul and Ragnar having a punch-up. The Tau book, it mentioned more psychic activity, but it was just a grinding siege that Shadowsun couldn't win for a bit. And
the only thing that was interesting that came out in the end was at the end of the last one, where it ended up teasing the return of the Squat, and that's the only good thing that came out of it.
Yeah,
I think that was War of the Spider, wasn't it?
I can't remember which one it was now. But it also set
War
up
of the Spider.
Yeah, the main thing that Psychic Awakening was there to do was set up 9th edition, and nothing else. It was a vehicle to get the Silent King back in the galaxy, and that was it. And it was boring because we got a couple of new hero miniatures, which were good, don't get me wrong, I own 2 of them, but it was just a bit boring.
Yeah, as a vehicle to usher in a new edition, I feel that Gathering Storm did it a lot better.
Yeah, it did, because Cadia blew up, Comara
sort
of blew up, and then Guilliman came back from the dead. So,
and Bealtown got fucked up as well.
Yeah, and that. So loads of stuff happened. With Arcs of Omen, I think you're absolutely right. It really depends on how ballsy the writing team is willing and allowed to be in terms of who are they allowed to kill, what are they allowed to take off the Imperium or give to them, and what confrontations are they willing to actually do, and which characters are they willing to set up.
And could you imagine if, like, Gozkul had actually defeated and killed Ragnar in revenge, or like the Tyranids had, like, the Blood Angels escaped with all the important stuff, but Baal itself was lost to the Tyranids? Like, how crazy that would have been.
I was just going to say, like, you know how basically they killed Commissar Yarok off screen? They could have used this as a vehicle to kill Yarok off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Yarok.
That's a huge wasted opportunity. Fucking hell.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that, if it's a vehicle to get Dark Mechanicum in the game, okay, I can live with that. But it needs to actually have a narrative and a payoff. That's the thing that I think a lot of 40k fans got really frustrated with in 5th, 6th, and 7th until they blew it up, which was, it was 1 minute to midnight and the plot went nowhere. Nothing happened.
In fairness, I think it was like that since 4th, in fairness.
Probably.
Because at least in the 3rd...
That's probably the most exciting thing about the old world for me, is that because we know essentially how it ends, like, there's already pre-planned consequences, so we don't have to worry about GW, like, not being willing to have characters die and, like, bad things happen and all that other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, in 2nd edition, we learned about, you know, Armageddon 1 and 2. In 3rd edition, they introduced Armageddon 3, you know, and as well as for the first Eye of Terror campaign, which then got retconned out of existence back until 7th edition. But from 4th edition onwards, I don't really recall anything happening up except for maybe, you know, what's it? You know, oh fuck, what was it called? Yeah, like Warzone Baal or whatever it is.
Warzone.
Because you know, because I had that box set, you know, for the Cryptus campaign.
Oh yeah, but that didn't actually. That just said, "Oh yeah, the Tyranids have moved closer to Baal," and it wasn't until the devastation of Baal that they actually did something with it, and that was in 8th.
Great. And didn't the devastation of Baal technically happen at the end of 7th? Technically,
the book
because when 8th edition came out, it's like, oh, by the way, Nitzum had invaded Baal and were driven off eventually.
No, because the book ends with Primaris Space Marines and they couldn't spoil it, so it had to come out in 8th.
Right.
It's set before 8th, but it was released to us in 8th because it had Primaris at the end of it.
Right.
And Guilliman.
Okay. Right.
So, yeah, as you say with Arcs of Omen, it's just like, it's a good idea that we're moving the plot. Abaddon's counter-invading because, you know, he's been on the back foot kind of for a bit now. He needs to actually do something rather than just watch the Imperium walk all over him for a bit. I know that's not what's happening, I'm quite aware, but it must feel like that to Chaos Space Marine players of just like, is Abaddon going to do something? Yes, now he's doing something. But what is that something, and what consequences is that something going to have? Because if it's going to be like the 12th Black, like the Gothic War, where, a big thing happened off screen where he actually won even though he was defeated. No, we're not having that again. So, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they are willing to do as a payoff, and that will determine whether this goes down as a good series or a bad one.
Yes. And given the time, we might want to do some cliff notes for remaining things in the news. So cliff note...
There's not a lot to say. There's a Necromunda character and beastie.
That beastie is so cool looking.
It's beautiful. Beautiful bug dinosaur doggo thing.
More of those, please.
Yeah, and the herder's pretty cool as well.
I like that his axe blade is actually made from like the shell of the creature.
Waste not, want not.
Exactly.
There is a skeleton with a flaming chainsaw for Blood Bowl.
Oh yeah,
As well
the
as
new
two new Goblin
dude,
players.
Blood Bowl is in such a golden age right now. It's so funny.
Yeah,
The Blood Bowl 3 comes out next month too. It's coming close.
Oh yeah.
Every single Blood Bowl miniature is a banger, and I don't think they've missed in months.
Nope. They've pretty much been like they're the perfect level of epic, but also hilarious.
Yeah, and the Stormcast Infernal Eternus has his kit pretty deep dived, and it makes a Chaos Lord and Demonic Mount, which we'd already seen leaked before, but now we know where it comes from.
Hooray!
Yeah, the new range for the Slaves of Darkness is fantastic. Also, is going to work really, really well for Warriors of Chaos and Fantasy, so win-win.
Also, unit options in AOS. When's the last time that happened?
Fucking hell.
Not anytime super soon. That's pretty rare for us.
Yep, it's such a pain.
Yes.
Anyway, there's your cliff notes.
And just going back to Blood Bowl very quickly, never forget that one story where they end up crossing over into 40k and a Gene Stealer ends up invading the pitch.
I mean, that works in Blood Bowl.
Because it was like a story. It was like a game of Dungeon Bowl, and they end up going through a portal, and they end up appearing in the middle of a battle between the Necrons and the Nids, and the Gene Stealer follows them back through the portal.
I'm gonna be upset if we don't like. That would be such a fun Easter egg in the video game. Is like you have a random chance of accidentally playing on a 40k map.
Oh, that'd be so cool. I still want to make a Blood Bowl video game that's less a recreation of the tabletop and more of like an actual sports sim, like an actual sports game, like, you know, where you have to, like, you control the players individually and you're passing the ball rather than just taking turns, like have it in real time kind of thing.
More like actual Madden.
I was going to say more like Mutant League football.
Oh yeah, that also works.
Isn't Madden absolute ass?
Yes, that's why I said Mutant League football instead.
I don't know. The last time I played it, it was on the N64, and it was okay back then.
I don't think it's changed since.
That was probably like 1998 or something.
See, I'm showing my age when I'm talking about Mutant League football, because that's from back in like 1992 or whatever.
Yeah, I was born then, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah. You missed it. That's such a fun game, Mutant League football. But anyway, now we got on the news out of the way. Has anyone been reading anything? Pardon me for rolling my eyes, I just don't know why I did that, but anyway.
No apologies.
No apologies for what?
No apologies.
All right. No, comma, apologies.
Yes, comma. Yes, there's a comma there.
Recent reading?
Yes.
Let's see. I've been reading my way back through the Carrick 8 Peaks Omnibus, doing Weekhead Taker stuff. Also, I read Soul Slayer not too long ago. Maybe like a week or two ago, which is the most recent of the Go Trek series in Age of Sigmar, and is the end of the trilogy by Darius Hinks, which I did not realize he was making it a trilogy, but it is definitely the end of it. It was actually weirdly... I was not expecting the end to be that shocking and sad, but it was very good.
Did you get reunited with Felix?
No, but like, do you want me to spoil what happens, or...
Tat, have you actually read this one? I can't remember if you did or not.
Which one?
Soul Slayer.
Yes, read it, reviewed it.
Yeah, I can't remember if you did or not.
So Malineth died at the end. The elf companion died.
There you go, which I did not think they were going to do. I thought she was going to be around forever.
Oh, yeah, because then they tease that new book where he's now teaming up with like a Sigmarite priest now, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes. So I think it's by a new author now. I don't think Darius Hinks is writing it. So
Bring back Felix Jaeger, you cowards.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did get him for a little bit in Ghoul Slayer, but I would love to find out where the hell his soul is, because it's not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, like, is Felix a Stormcast?
That would be
something Cetros of the Imperishables.
Oh my!
Which Darius Hinks confirmed is not Cetra.
Yeah, which is...
I thought that was David Geimer.
Oh, David Geimer.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there's so much.
Oh, didn't he also say that the main Skaven antagonist, he wanted it to be Ikit Claw, but he couldn't, so he said it called it Ikrit instead or something?
Yes, it was, and I remember thinking this is an Ikit Claw reference, and I called him out on it.
Yeah, there's been a number of times in Age of Sigmar where Black Library authors have basically tried to return a fantasy character, and everyone goes, "Oh my god, it's so and so," and GW's like, "No, no, no, it's not."
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying so hard to get themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
no.
I tell you what, someone could do though.
They're like, "Look, it's a fun cameo," and Games Workshop's like, "You can't have those. People get too excited. Stop that."
But what they could do though, they could bring back Thankor because he did survive.
He already is in the game.
Yeah, no, but bring him back in this novel. I mean, because has he actually appeared in an AOS novel?
He's appeared in the second audio drama of Gotrek. He's the main antagonist, and it's if you like Gotrek and Felix at all, Blood of the Old World is so good. I can't even describe it. And the final battle with him and Thankor is amazing.
What was his reaction upon seeing Frank? Was like, "You again?" It's like, "Oh god damn it!"
Oh yeah, dude, it's everything you want it to be. Like they tease Thankor at the end of the first audio drama, finding out Gotrek's still alive, and it's hilarious because he just starts having like an anxiety attack, and it's amazing. It's so funny.
It's like, not him,
Yeah.
no, please.
Like, because he's just convinced Gotrek has literally just out of spite followed him, like however many thousands, if not millions of years it's been. But in Blood of the Old World, they finally have their showdown that's been building up since the end of Skaven Slayer, essentially. And it's great. But yeah, Thankor could absolutely have new novels, and I would read them because the Thankor trilogy is one of the best trilogies in Warhammer Fantasy, in my opinion. And C.L. Werner is still writing a Black Library, so if he wants to do it, I am all in.
How many Skaven novels have there actually been in AOS specifically? Skaven novels?
That are actually like fully about the Skaven?
Yes.
Zero.
There's
Like,
been
It's an untapped market there. So.
Yeah,
Novellas, yes. Novels, no.
Yeah, the only book I can think of that is mostly about the Skaven is oh god, I can't even remember what it's called now. I think it's called Plague or no, it's called Pestilence because it's about Clan Pestilence, but it's not from their perspective. Weirdly, it's mostly from the perspective of Stormcast and Seraphon, which actually made me love it even more than I thought I would because it's really really cool how they do the Lizardmen. And it's also the Stormcast from it's the Stormcast everybody really really likes. The lion. I forget what his name is.
Oh,
off the top of my
I
head.
thought when you said Stormcast everyone likes, I thought you meant Hamilcar Barrier.
No, it's the other one that
There's another one.
I think it's oh god, is it David Geimer, I think, that wrote his book? He has his book is like Champion of the Gods or something.
Yes, David Geimer. Hamilcar is so funny.
Yeah, Hamilcar. Yeah, Hamilcar is the Stormcast's main character in Pestilence, and he's fantastic. And his interaction with the Seraphon is hysterical.
Yeah, Hamilcar is brilliant. More Hamilcar if you can, please.
He literally becomes best friend with like the Gorok equivalent, and it's amazing. Like him and Gorok are just running around killing Skaven. It's so good.
So when you say like, it's a novel called Pestilence, you think it's about Clan Pestilence, it's actually about Lizardmen and Stormcast.
Yeah.
It reminds you like, there's a 40k novel called Firecast that's about Imperial Guard.
Yeah,
Lovely.
that happened.
Poor Tau, man. They're just one of the most unloved stepchildren of 40k.
It's weird. Like, there was a comment on the previous episode where we reviewed the Shadow Sun novel being like, there's now two versions of the Tau. There's Codex Tau and Phil Kelly's Tau with his hate boner for the Ethereals. And it's like, you do realize that every single good piece of Tau literature that was about the Tau has pretty much been written by Phil Kelly. Like, you don't have to like the direction it's going in, but like, Phil Kelly does not have a hate boner for the Ethereals. Phil Kelly just knows how to write Tau.
I was going to say, I think pretty much every piece of literature regarding the Tau was written by Phil Kelly.
And that.
It's funny because, sorry, you say that they're the unloved stepchildren or freak or whatever, but the Tau actually have more novels from their perspective than the Orcs do.
Really? Well, that's just a shame.
The Orcs have like 2.
Wow, that's sad that Age of Sigmar has more Orc perspective novels than 40k.
And the thing is, one of those Orc novels, it's only a third of it's from the Orc perspective. The other 2/3 are Adeptus Mechanicus and Iron Warriors.
Oh, that's a shame. We got some really good fun books about greenskins in AOS and fantasy. I mean, fantasy alone has the Skarsnik novel, which is amazing.
What do you think of the new Skarsnik replacement model, by the way, that was revealed a couple of weeks ago?
Oh yeah, the Skarsnik callback model. It's fantastic. Like, it's really, really great. Like, we essentially, like, character wise, we already have new Skarsnik in the the Loon King, who's a great model, and he's a great character. I absolutely love his character, and his lore is really fun.
But I was going to say, like, new Skarsnik is, it's that rock orbiting the Bad Moon.
Yeah. They they kind of did what Skarsnik should have been, like, as far as, like, covering all bases, where now he's a Night Goblin super shaman that's also scary in combat, instead of just being another war boss. Because Fantasy had this weird thing where the vast majority of the greenskin characters are war bosses, and there's only one shaman, being Wurzag, and then
Yes, that's the one.
We never really got any playable shamans for goblins, which was always a shame, because it's like we could have used a Night Goblin shaman, or better yet, a Forest Goblin shaman, which hopefully they'll give us that in the old world. But, like, there are characters in the background that are those calibers, but there was never, like, a playable special character, which was weird. But yes, I love the model. It's beautiful and fantastic, and it like, if someone used that model and was like, if someone played Fantasy against me, and they're like, hey, this is my Skarsnik mini on a square base, and it's the right footage, I would be like, yeah, great, awesome.
Yeah, good. Now, Rem, you messaged me during the week and said something about a certain novel that you got done about a certain golden boy, and I get the feeling that you brought this up because you were dying to talk about it.
Yes, because I managed to read through the Sanguinius novel of the Primarch series. So, considering the novel itself is still relatively new, if you wish to avoid spoilers, head to the timestamp in the video description. So,
now,
entering the spoiler room in 3, 2, 1... Vincent Man Royal Rumble appearance confirmed. Anyway, that's not... Anyway.
No.
So, as a Horus Heresy novel, it's pretty good. I'll say that off the bat. As a Primarch novel, as in a book in the Primarch series, it's pretty good. As a Primarch novel in where the book is about a Primarch, it's utter dog shit, because Sanguinius has been relegated to a supporting character who shows up maybe about a quarter of the time in the entire bloody book.
What?
Yeah. Because the main focus of the book is a remembrancer, who's basically been assigned to chronicle the Legion. So, to start from the beginning, we have a prologue of an adept somewhere, some bureaucratic adept, running through corridors, blah, 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 heading to the archives of some place. He gets into the archives and gets a box that contains within it the last surviving copy of a book. Now, he's been told by whoever hired him not to open this box under any circumstances, and to certainly not read the contents inside. But he does anyway, and our story begins. So, the entire book is told from first person, from the perspective of a remembrancer, whose name I can't remember because they mention his name probably about 2 or 3 times in the entire book, and since it's from a first person perspective, you don't really learn it very easily, so for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to call him Bob. It'd just be easier for me to call him Bob. So, Bob's basically been assigned to chronicle the events of the Blood Angels Legion. The story takes place shortly after the events of the Council of Nicaea, so he'd been given a date. And he's been selected to do this role because he has been in trouble with imperial bureaucracy as of late for writing the truth. Essentially, he gives a warts and all account of things going on during the Great Crusade. Atrocities and everything, he does not shy away. And because of that, he's been getting in trouble, but because of that, he's been selected to chronicle the Blood Angels because Sanguinius wants the truth told. He just wants the truth told. And accompanying him, one of the people who actually recommended him is another remembrancer called Widera, who is an artist. She's basically, responsible for painting things like in these big, inspirational murals for posters and stuff like that for propaganda purposes.
Yeah, I know the type.
Yeah. So they're basically being transported towards Baal, and they can see the entire Legion fleet in orbit of Baal. And it's a huge, holy shit, look at this moment. But because of bureaucracy and all that, they're stuck in orbit for days waiting to gain clearance to land. And it's this amazing thing isn't really that amazing anymore. I'm kind of bored of it now. Oh, we're actually making planetfall. Hooray!
Good.
And Bob's been told, make sure you take your rad pills because, Baal's an irradiated wasteland, so take your drugs. They get down to Baal. It's really hot. It's really dusty. The sky's pink. Very Martian evil type vibes there. He's feeling hot. He's feeling, kind of woozy, but he just chalks up to combination of excitement and, being on a new planet after being cooped up in, on a spaceship for so long. And they make their way to the Blood Angels Fortress Monastery. Bob basically makes his way inside, and he sees a single Blood Angel just standing there, overlooking several screens at once, basically, doing logistics and all that. And it's a Blood Angel named Baal Septus. And he's basically been assigned as the Remembrancer's attaché, essentially. It's like, if you need anything, you come to me. If you want to speak to anything, you come to me.
Right. So a minder.
Yeah, attaché, yeah. And, he's going on. So Bob goes around and starts asking, questions, taking notes and stuff. Not of Baal Septus, because he doesn't really want to speak to him. He's like, I'm busy, fuck off. But because, he's been invited by the Primarch, he's been given basically free reign to go pretty much anywhere he wants. So he's talking to he's going to talk to Legion serfs and all that. And he's basically asked, is anyone we can go for a drink? It's like, not funny. No, I'm serious. I'm actually, I'm dying for a fucking pint. So they go to this local tavern-y type place. And, they're having, barlight wine, as you do. And he sees this big pitcher of, really thick, dark wine. And the serf's like, yeah, don't you dare think about it. That's purely for the Blood Angels. I was like, what is it?
Blood.
It probably is blood wine, yeah. It's never stated, but it's basically what it is. It's like, you do not touch that's purely for the Blood Angels. So eventually they end up going back into orbit, going towards the next site of compliance. Which is a world called, I don't know how you're going to pronounce this, because it's spelled like YLCHRM, so I don't know, I was going to call it Elikim or something like that. I don't know how you honestly pronounce it. Planet Y, there you go, just call Planet Y.
Alright, that'll do.
Yeah. Yep. But as they're on their way to Planet Y, Bob ends up meeting with Sanguinius, But before he actually meets with him, he was told by, Baal Septus and the serfs and Wadera, don't look at his wings. Don't look at his wings. He finds that rude. And he's don't say those things, don't say his wings. It's like, oh no, he's hot, kind of thing. Then it means it's nice to meet you. And they end up having a brief conversation where they end up having a little bit of a friendly argument in regards to methodology and stuff like that. And Sanguinius is like, I appreciate you pushing back. This is what we need for people to, to actually uncover the truth. We need someone to push back, not just be a yes man.
Yeah, if you just walk all over and accept what's put in front of you, then you aren't actually going to uncover the information. And Sanguinius is probably used to having an army of yes men around him, not necessarily his own legionaries, but every non-Astartes around him will just be like, yes, Sanguinius, no, of course, Sanguinius, whatever you say, Sanguinius. No, not helpful.
It's funny because when he first meets, Sanguinius' first words to Bob was like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. I read your book. Oh, fuck. It's like, did you like it? It was interesting.
That's not a yes.
It's not, but more importantly, it's not a no.
True.
So they're on their way to Planet Y, and Sanguinius and some of his officers have been meeting with, the world's delegations and stuff like that, to try and integrate them peacefully into the Imperial fold. But the Planet Y's people is basically like, no, fuck off, no, go away or we'll shoot you kind of thing. And Sanguinius basically left with no other options, like, right, we're going to have to destroy everything. So, destroy everything. It's like, we tried to bring them in peacefully, we've been trying for weeks. If they're not going to come in, then we're going to burn it all to the fucking ground.
No surgical strikes, no taking out insurgents, no anything. They're just going to it's either you come in peace or you come in a box.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ, Sam.
Bob ends up pretty much saying those exact words, and Sanguinius just looks at me and says, exactly.
Well, at least Sang acknowledges he's being a bastard.
It's not so much being a bastard, it's more a case of like, I've tried every peaceful option available, you're leaving me no choice, so I'm doing this to send a message to everyone else.
Right.
Kind of thing. So Bob, he ends up wanting to go into combat with the Blood Angels, just to see to record it, for posterity's sake. Baal Septus doesn't go with him because he's busy, fighting in Terminator squads. So Bob's instead assigned to another squad, who are basically stationed inside a Thunderhawk gunship, basically just flying around. And
I get the feeling the thirst is going to pop up in a second.
Now, this particular squad, they have a unique emblem. Blood Angels players from 40k may know this one, of an eye surrounded by fire. And
for those of us who don't know what that means, would you mind?
Basically, they're the ones responsible for watching out for instances of the Red Thirst.
Right.
Hence the eye.
Important job.
That makes sense. I just wanted to double check what that meaning meant.
Yeah. So they're flying around, and one of the Space Marines goes, there. And Bob's like, what? Was like, oh, I can see the Primarch. Fucking hell, he looks scary. Because Sanguinius, like, his golden armor basically looks blood red because of all the fire and the smoke and all that, and he's just wrecking shit everywhere.
Yep.
So the Thunderhawk touches down. Most of the squad leave, but one Space Marine stays along with Bob. They get up and fly off. It's like, oh, I thought we were going out. I was like, no. And it cuts about a few hours later. The battle's finished. Bob's been set down on the Thunderhawk gunship again, and he's actually allowed to walk around for a bit.
Yeah, because it's all
and
over.
He's exploring the ruins and the rubble and all that, and he ends up slipping down some scree down the side of a hill. And as he does so, he basically trips over a body that had been covered by, the loose rock. It's one of the, the planet-wise soldiers. Their face has been stuck in an expression of terror, and their body has been completely drained of all fluid.
Oh, hello.
That's not good.
And he's like, okay, what the fuck happened there? I don't recall any weapons that did that. Oh god. He climbs back up the hill, and he sees Baal Septus waiting for him, clad in his big Terminator armor.
Shit.
It would be remiss of me to let you die, but unfortunately, the Primarch wants you alive, so come here. Just grabs him, takes off. They end up going back in orbit, and the Blood Angels ended up receiving a transmission from a nearby system. And the message said, "This world is murder."
Oh.
Yeah, long-time
We're
Horus Heresy
going
novel.
for the Megarachnids.
Yeah, exactly. We're going back to murder, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, there's going to be some explaining needed here, because that is a very old story.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Right, so very early on in the Horus Heresy novel series, I think it was actually
I think it was Horus Rising.
It was literally like one of the first 4 books. The campaign for the World of Murder was basically Space Marines against a race called the Megarachnids, which are basically giant, insectoid creatures. And it's basically the conflict that led to Horus coming into contact with the Interrex civilization. And because of this contact with Interrex, that ended up resulting in Erebus stealing the Anathane Blade, and then basically every shit that happened in the Horus Heresy, every bit of shit that happened can be traced down to this one particular campaign. Which is why
it's also worth noting that the Space Marines lost. And they don't lose very often in the Great Crusade, but they lost.
Yes. At least initially they lost, yes.
Okay, that is interesting.
Because the World of Murder was actually contested for twice. But yes, so we had the Blood Angels going to World of Murder, to wage war against the Megarachnids, but they're not going alone. They're being joined by the Emperor's children and the Sons of Horus.
Let's get a very spicy meatball going.
Yes. And, Bob's, he joins, Space Marines, in a Rhino to record this. It's like, I need to record this for posterity's sake. You need to, warts and all, you need to see how a Space Marine fights. And he's sitting in the Rhino thinking, I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have come here. What the fuck is that crawling on top of the Rhino? I shouldn't have come here. Oh fuck.
Correct. Megarachnids will fuck your shit up, and I don't care if you're an Astartes or a Custodian even, I reckon would get there fucked up by Megarachnids.
Exactly, yeah.
What is it about these arachnids that makes them so, OP?
Basically, they're giant spiders the size of, they're much bigger than a Space Marine, for one. They're stupidly fast, quickly, supremely agile, and they have technology that can not only, slice through Space Marine armor as if it were butter, but they're basically their trees, essentially, create such, incoherent weather patterns that it makes, teleporting, drop assaults, flyers, all but an impossibility.
Okay, so they have a lot of different types of advantages.
Yeah.
It's Schizostrand Arachnarox on crack.
And they have actual tech that somehow works. Okay.
They're technologically advanced. It's not just biological, they are technologically advanced. They engineer their own creatures to be things like, shock troopers, transports, essentially, guerrilla fighters, flyers, etc. In fact, their blade arms are so sharp that Lucius the Eternal ended up taking one as his own sword for a while.
Shock.
Yes, he is a cock, yes. So, as the fight's going on, as the Blood Angels and the Emperor's Children and the Sons of Horus are basically ripping into the Megarachnids, Bob ends up looking up towards a nearby cliff, and he sees the same squad from before, just watching over the battlefield. Not doing anything, just watching. And he's asking one of the serfs he's with, what are they doing? Oh, they're disciplinary officers. They're watching for laxes and discipline.
That's a good way of getting around the problem.
Yeah, it's but would discipline really be a problem in this instance? I don't know. But, before we continue, I just remembered a detail that I completely forgot prior to the events of Murder. After Planet Y, but before Murder. So as they're making their journey, Bob wishes to interview a Space Marine, for his records. And he ends up speaking with a Blood Angel called Elian, who's, for a Space Marine, is a rather friendly, personable chap. He's like, hello, how are you? You doing good, mate? Yeah, let's go around here for a pint kind of thing. That type of bloke. Right. As far as by Space Marine standards.
Yeah, they're not very high standards, but we'll count them.
And he ends up going with Elian to his quarters, and Elian's just being very blasé, just don't mind me, I'm just going to strip naked and jump in the shower for a bit after I just wrecked some combat servitors and training.
As you do.
As you do. And Bob's just he's looking at this brass statue that Elian had carved. It was a self-portrait statue, and, completely flawless, as you would expect from a Blood Angel. Absolutely beautiful, sculpture work, immaculate. But interestingly, the proportions are slightly different. They're not Astartes proportions, they're human proportions.
Oh.
So basically, he carved a self-portrait of himself as a human as opposed to a Space Marine.
Interesting.
Yes. And he notices a nearby cupboard. And it's oh, there's more statues in here. Elian just slams the door shut with his hand and says, that's off limits. I'd like you to leave now.
Oh dear.
Oh, can we talk later? You can always put in a request with the captain. Basically, a polite way of saying, fuck off.
Yeah.
You overstepped your mark, mate. So, going back to Murder. Bob is watching battle unfold, and he sees Sanguinius fighting alongside the Blood Angels, not flying over the battlefield, but literally marching on the ground shoulder to shoulder with his men. Getting stuck in. And he sees Horus and the Mournival show up as well. And Horus and Sanguinius end up both, teaming up to fight against what is effectively a Megarachnid queen or general, whatever. There's basically this monstrous, creature that's basically the size of a Baneblade. Yeah, and you know how big a Baneblade is.
Pretty big, yeah.
Yep. And after the battle's finished, after like they return to orbit, Widera basically says, like, I'm using this as the basis for my next painting. You know, and she like painted it and showed it to Bob, and it's like, that's absolutely immaculate. That's beautiful. That is. It's better than your last picture. It's like, I don't know if you're taking the piss on us. No, I'm serious. That's really good. It'll be really inspirational for, you know, to hang up over, you know, the manufactorum lines where people are, you know, building weapons and stuff. And Bob's starting to feel a bit queasy, you know, all of a sudden. And Widera's asking, are you sure you were taking your rad pills when you were on Baal? Yes, I took them. You might have caught something. Maybe you should report to, like, you know, the apothecary or something. And Bob's walking down the corridor, and he ends up bumping into Mercedes Ullerton. You know, one of the Sons of Horus remembrances.
Yeah, we all know her name if we've been following the heresy lore closely.
Yep. And she basically asked Bob's like, how the hell did you convince the Blood Angels to let you down there? Because the Sons of Horus wouldn't even let us down there. And it's like, I don't know, I just asked and they let me. Fair enough. Could you share your data with me? Sure, here you go. Oh, cheers. That's the end of my cameo. Essentially. But Bob's still really disconcerted by, you know, the quote-unquote disciplinary officers, because, like, they seem really out of place.
Yeah, why would a legion as noble and honourable and inspirational as the Blood Angels, led by such a noble Primarch, require disciplinary officers, especially when fighting against bloody mega-arachnids? They're not even fighting humans.
Exactly. So he ends up going to one of the serfs in the archives, you know, and basically asking, you know, do you have any ideas on what this squad is? No, never heard of it. Never heard of it, no. Right, could you tell me where Brother Elian is? You know, he's of tactical squad, blah, 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 blah. There are no records of Nostaltes with that name. What do you mean there's no record of Nostaltes with that name? There isn't any. But I spoke to him the other day. There's no record of him. So Bob's thinking, like, okay, what the actual fuck is going on?
As you would.
Yeah. And he ends up, like, trying to find his way back to Elian's room, because he vaguely remembers where it is. He finds it, he goes in, he goes to the door, but the door's already open. He goes in, the room had been effectively trashed. It's like, what is going on? There's no one around. He opens that cupboard, which he was told not to do so earlier, and inside there's more statues, all of Elian's face. But each one's slightly different. Like, one of them, you know, still vaguely human. One of them, he looks angry. One of them, he's got bulging eyes and prolonged canine fangs.
Oh, God.
And basically, they're sculptures of different stages of the Red Thirst.
Oh, God.
And he's like, what the actual fuck is going on? Then he hears a noise outside and sees the faint light of, like, a search lumen. So he hides. And Widera and that same serf from the archives, they come in. And he overhears them talking, saying, like, are you sure he tried to come here? And it's like, well, he was asking too many questions about Elian, but blah, blah, blah. And Bob's just listening, is like, okay, there's a massive fuck-off conspiracy going on. What the serious fuck is going on?
Yeah, this is starting to get... the Blood Angels are not steaky, but this is starting to get weird.
Yeah. So the serf and Widera end up leaving, and Bob's just waiting there for, like, you know, a good 10, 15 minutes or so before he leaves himself.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of heading back to his ship, or heading back to his quarters rather, he ends up going deeper into the ship. And he's looking deeper and deeper, and he ends up coming across this big chamber. And in the center of the chamber, there's an altar. He approaches it, he feels something crunch underneath. He looks down, bones. Human bones.
Shit.
And he takes a closer look at the altar, and there's a golden chalice there, seated by the altar, which is just underneath some grooves where basic sciences be channeled into the chalice, i.e. blood.
Is that the same chalice that Corbulo goes on to wield? Because that's a particular chalice, isn't it?
No idea.
Just wondered. Sorry,
It's not mentioned, so...
Yeah, fair enough.
And I apologize for cutting out because my internet's connection's playing up today. I don't know why. So if I've talked over any of you guys at any point, that's probably why. I'll try and fix that in post.
No, not at all. I talked over you. That was the problem.
Right. But yeah, from behind, he hears like a boom, boom, like heavy footsteps, like power armor footsteps. Fuck, run. He's running through the corridor as fast as he can. He's running. He sees a door, exit, run. Okay, I'm almost there. Shit, I've just been caught. Turns around, it's Bioseptus. And it's like, the only reason I haven't killed you is because the Primarch wants you alive. Come here.
Oh, God, Sang, what are you going to do? Don't ruin the image.
Basically, dumps Bob in the room, and Sanguinius enters, and it's like, I do apologise about that. Bioseptus is not, the most cordial of men, but anyway. You said you were after the truth, didn't you? It's like, what? Okay, so what the fuck is all this? And Sanguinius goes on to explain about, the Legion's past, the whole Revenant Legion thing,
Mm-hmm.
And Bob's like, oh yeah, I heard about these stories, yeah, and then you reunited with your Legion and you expunged all of that from your Legion. It's like, well, that's what everyone thinks. I've managed to rein their appetites in, but they've not been eradicated completely.
Got it.
But they are being controlled. And that is what the purpose of that one squad is for. To look for any lapses in discipline and to take care of them. That is what happened to your friend Elion. He lost his control. He needed to be dealt with.
Oh dear.
Now, I told you from the beginning to report things truthfully. Will you continue to do so?
Your life depends on it.
And Bob basically says, yes, I will tell the truth. The whole truth, warts and all. Like, you are shining light to your Legion, to humanity, but what I've seen can't be allowed to stand.
Nope.
And Sanguinius basically is kind of like, I wish you didn't know about this, but I want you to be honest. And that's all I've ever asked of you. Now, Bob ends up being transferred off of the Red Tier, because this is where he was stationed at this point, off the Red Tier onto another Blood Angel ship that's crewed entirely by serfs. No Space Marines in sight. And he finds that he's no longer queasy. So, he thinks, was this due to the ship itself? Was there something pheromonal or psychic in the end that caused me to feel that way? And he ends up later speaking with Redera as he's writing his book, essentially. And Redera's like, you can't tell people that the Legion's like, you can't tell people that Sanguinius is like that, because it will have a huge effect on the morale of everyone involved in the Great Crusade. You can't do it. It's like, I have to do it because he told me to tell the truth. And I will tell the truth.
I don't think Sanguinius meant it quite that literally.
We end up cutting back, for our epilogue, we cut back to the start with the Adept and the book, which is, Bob's book. He returns it to his master, who ends up being an elderly Redera. Because as we find out, this is several decades after the events of the Horus Heresy. We're now sitting at. And the Imperial Cult, the Ecclesiarchy have basically announced, or the Proto-Ecclesiarchy rather, are basically announcing Sanguinala. Like the first Sanguinala, this day shall be used to commemorate the Holy Sanguinius for, his actions in, helping the Emperor defeat the Archtraitor, blah, blah, blah. And Redera says to the Adept, do you have the package? Yes. Did you open the box? No. Are you sure? Yes. Thank you. Adept leaves. Widera puts a little order through for a little comm link saying, yeah, kill him, he opened the box. I could tell. And Widera takes the book out, she looks at it, and she's like tempted, like, do I keep this? This is the last known copy of this book. She chucks it in the fire. It's like, I'm sorry, but no one can be allowed to know what Sanguinius truly was like. He needs to remain a symbol for the Imperium. The end.
Yeah. I'm sure the action sequences were very good. I'm sure the narrative and the way Sanguinius is written is exceptional. It just...
As I said, as a Horus Heresy book, it's good. As a book in the Primarch series, it's good. But as a Primarch book, as in a book about a Primarch, it's terrible. Because Sanguinius is a very minor supporting character.
Yeah, and like... I don't like how it ends. I don't know. Like, it just ends on, and then nothing happened. He was allowed to write a book. It somehow did not get around. I appreciate that it could have been censored and blocked to all hells, but also, it must have got round. He wrote it, he published it, it had to get round somehow.
In fairness, she did say this is the last surviving copy.
No, but this is decades later. Mm-hmm. I know the heresy breaks out not long after, and that probably saves him. But this book is there. It might be the last copy now, but it was out there for decades. And it's just like, yeah, didn't happen. And we'll just chuck it away and burn it, and that's that. And it's all forgotten. And I don't know, like...
Oh, and I also want to point out that the image that the Proto-Ecclesiarch used to display for the announcement of Sanguinala, it's Widera's picture of Horus and Sanguinius fighting against a Megarachnid, but with Horus airbrushed out.
That's a shock.
Which is kind of amusing when you think about it, so...
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just interesting.
We'll just remove them in post.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. I think that's a really good story to have told. And I'm glad they've told it. But I think you're right. That sort of serves a purpose that isn't the Sanguinius novel.
Agreed.
Like, we don't get to see Sanguinius grappling with it. We don't get to see the Blood Angels commanders dealing with the issue of this Remembrancer who's poking around.
There are scenes of dialogue between the two, prior to just, the end and near the beginning. There are some scenes, but they are more minor. It's just basically like the end bit is like the main bit of dialogue with him, essentially. I still think it would have been a better idea if they, followed the route of, that short story. I forgot what name it is, but that short story where the Silent King basically reveals, oh yeah, by the way, I met with Sanguinius during the Great Crusade. If they followed up on that, I think that would have been a better story. I feel. Because that way, not only do you get to explore, Sanguinius' characterization better, you're also tying into a pre-existing story. It's basically like, this is a prequel, this is a sequel kind of thing. And not only that, you get the chance to write, another faction that you wouldn't normally get a chance to do so in 40k, that being the Necrons. Because, if you can have Horus Heresy stories where you can write about the Nids, there's at least two stories where the Nids are involved. And then there's one Horus Heresy book where it talks about the Khitan, Mechanicum. But again, that was pre-Necron retcon, so take that as what you will. Because there are some factions you can't write about during Horus Heresy. Like, you can't write about the Tau because the Tau didn't exist yet. You can't really write about the Necrons because they're still asleep. You can't really write about this because they're not in the galaxy yet.
No.
You could write about them in Pharos at the end because the epilogue, it shows, by the way, it was the actions of Pharos that attracted the Nids to the Milky Way in the first place, so it's all their damn fault.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do bits like that. I think you're right in that is a more interesting Sanguinius story to tell. This is a fantastic Heresy-era Blood Angels story.
Agreed.
With a bit of a squib ending, because I don't know, I just don't... the ending of, they sent him away, he wrote the book, he got away with it, but they censored it and then they threw it away afterwards. It's a bit of a bleh ending.
It's basically like everything that all this person's efforts were for naught. Which in the end, you could argue that's the most 40k appropriate ending of all.
Yeah, but it also feels like our time was wasted because we could have picked most of that up in a chapter where Sanguinius maybe was writing a private entry or was talking amongst his confidants about what was going on and who are we bringing into this squad who can be trusted to oversee discipline. They could do it in one chapter in a Sanguinius novel, a proper about Sanguinius novel. The whole story was the Blood Angels went around some places. They had some fight. The Red Thirst happened. They tried to cover it up. It got not exactly exposed, but nothing happened. The end. I'm reducing it down quite harshly, I know.
Yeah, I also, like, it's been, like, about a month since I read the book now, so I may have glossed over some things, so please bear that in mind.
Yeah.
So if anyone's screaming at me in the comments saying, you forgot this, I probably did forget this, because I'm high on painkillers right now, because I'm dealing with a very itchy foot thanks to having about 5 stitches in it, thank you very much.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
But no, it sounds like it was a good read. I just agree that for the Sanguinius book, it's a waste of a book for that job. It's a great book, I'm sure, but it's not a great Sanguinius book.
Yeah. I feel like this might have been better used for the Horus Heresy character series, and if they used a Remembrancer who's already pre-established for this kind of thing, I think that would, for something in the Horus Heresy character series, this would have been perfect. But for in the Primarch series, where Sanguinius has been reduced to a minor supporting character in his own book, that's kind of insulting in a way.
Yeah, like Primarchs who can get away with being a side character are people like Alpharius, because he's supposed to be super duper mysterious, or someone like Guilliman, because he's an administrator, and his role in Dawn of Fire is played perfectly in that role. So you can write Primarchs as liner supporting characters who say important things and do important things, but aren't the important focus of the novel. It can be done, but
I was going to say Ferrus Mass would be a better choice, considering he's a better supporting character because we don't have enough time for him to be a main character.
Well, that too. But Sanguinius is the loyalist poster boy. He is the goodest of boys. And that's just a waste of his book.
Agreed. Like I say, it wasn't a bad book. It was actually it was a really good book. But again, as a Primarch book, bit of a misnomer.
Agreed.
The funny thing is, it's still one of the better books in the Primarch series. Because, let's be honest, most of the books in the Primarch series were either mediocre or shit. There were very few number of exceptions.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like, considering the Horus Heresy is banger after Battle of the Abyss, after banger after Descent of Angels, after banger. And the Siege of Terror books have been bangers across the board. The Heresy era stuff has genuinely been probably the most consistent literature output not called Age of Sigmar. But the Primarchs themselves just seem to be horribly hard to write when they're not in massive fight scenes all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I've said this once, I'll say it again. The best books in that series are Angrons and Lorgars. And because it's focusing purely on them and their backstories and, like, more the psychology of things and, like, their motivations and everything like that. With Perturabo's being, a close third. And
Magnus's was pretty good, as I recall, wasn't it?
Magnus's was okay. It's one of the better ones, but it's not top tier.
Right.
If I had to pick the top 5 in no particular order, Angron, Lorgar, Perturabo, Alpharius, and Sanguinius.
Wow, fair.
And I'll say this, like, Angron's book, it's absolutely fucking heartbreaking. Like, you read through that book and you gain a whole new appreciation for the guy, like, and all the suffering he had to go through. Same with Lorgar's to an extent, because again, like, Lorgar has never been a favourite Primarch of mine. I've always found Lorgar to be a kind of an annoying character, to be honest. Then I read his Primer book and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing, this book.
Yeah, like I remember when that book came out and you went through it and you talked about it, and it genuinely, that book took Lorgar from, I genuinely hate this character, go away Lorgar.
So you feeling sorry for him?
Yeah, like, you know he's a bastard and he's going to end up a bastard, but he wasn't a bastard just because he was a broken man. Broken by his own non-biological father into this...
Basically, everything is Corferon's fault.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But no, the Primarchs are at their best when they are being ultra badasses on the battlefield. See Sanguinius at the Siege of Terror. Won't spoil it because I know that's still a relatively new book. Or when they are being people. Like actual humans. The Space Marines are not human. The Primarchs are supposed to be human. Like, advanced beyond humanity, yes. But unlike their sons who were created of janky data, they are human.
They are the pinnacle of human evolution, essentially.
Yeah, and they should be treated like people sometimes. Let us have that time, like in not Lost in the Damned, the book where Horus reflects on the fact that why did I get all the fucked up ones?
Warmaster.
And he's...
In the Order of Drama, Warmaster.
That's the one. And he's like, I got all the broken messes, and he reflects on things.
And he thinks about like how he wishes he had Gilliman on his side and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you've got Fulgrim dealing with his own grief and anguish after killing his own best friend at Istvan 5. You've got the inevitable shattering of Magnus as in The Fury of Magnus Novella, as he goes through pretty much the 5 stages of grief in 5 minutes, whilst also being battered into oblivion by Vulcan. And letting the Primarchs be humans is what makes people like them. Yes, you might like the Legion because, oh, I like their aesthetic. Oh, I think they've got cool tactics. Oh, that's a really neat gimmick that they've got. But a lot of people go for a Legion because of the Primarch. Like, you didn't pick Night Lords because of Night Lords, if I were to guess, Ram. You picked them because of Kurz.
I'll be honest, I picked Night Lords mainly due to nostalgia purposes, because during 2nd edition, they were like the poster boys for Chaos for a while, so...
Fair enough. But no, I set on 1,000 Suns as my 30k Legion because of Magnus, and the story of the 1,000 Suns, and the story of Magnus was what resonated with me as the one I picked. And when I think of the Primarchs I don't like, or I didn't like, I think of Corax, not because Corax is a bad character, but because everything Corax goes through is just, I'm sad, everything is shit, and it's all gone wrong. We don't actually see Corvus grapple with it, deal with it, and try to rebuild his Legion in after the Raptor project. He just goes into a depressive mess. And I bet the story that leads to Corax leaving that says nevermore at the end, that book would be bloody fantastic as it properly dives into Corax's head. Russ, the same. Russ is a character, I know Wolfsbane really helped with this, who just seemed like a blunt one-note punching machine. And now, thanks to Wolfsbane, he actually, he's still an impetuous idiot, which is why I don't like him. It's partly why I don't like him.
He's been given more depth.
He's got depth. He's got layers. He's like an onion. He's got layers.
Okay, I didn't expect a Shrek reference at this time, but...
I know. Every time I say layers, I have to restrain myself. And I fail most of the time. But it's so important.
God, I imagine you talking about the lair there. It was like Fulgrim fought against the lair. Sorry.
God. No, they are characters who are so important and need to be treated as characters, not vehicles. Like, to think about fantasy, for example, or AOS. AOS is probably way better for this. When AOS came out, the gods were nobodies. And now, Sigmar is a person. He has wants, he has needs, he has regrets, he has thoughts. He has conversations with Alariel about what might have been. He has pseudo-conversations with Nagash where they get to have their issues out in spirit form. in the middle of the Soul Wars novel. The gods of AOS getting to be people is important. Teclis, Morathi, Sigmar, Malarian, hell, even Slaanesh. They get to be characters with nuance and personalities and flaws, and that is what big characters need to have in many ways. The Space Marines, you can get away with it because they're not human, but these big characters in AOS 40k, 30k, wherever, need that relatability and that, well, not relatability, but that humanistic element that you can latch onto, that you can sympathize with, that you can play around with and headcanon with. I don't know, Sotek, if I'm saying anything that you agree with here in terms of like the characters of AOS or fantasy, like the characters like being bigger than just they are a character in a vehicle and then being
I absolutely agree. Like I that's one of the biggest strengths of Age of Sigmar. It's something I was actually talking about like yesterday or the day before. Actually, it's in a video I think I'm going to be releasing when we're recording, right after we're this recording is finished. But like one of the biggest things I love so much about the Broken Realms series of events we went through, which was the end of second edition taking us into third, was we really got to see how the gods of Age of Sigmar, like, you know, Gotrek really hits it on the head in his series in that they call themselves gods and they try to pretend like they are God, how they try to act like they think God should act, but they're not really. Like, they were all mortal creatures once that had feelings and emotions and all this stuff. And they still have those, even though they try to hide them. And we get, like, one of my favorite moments of Mortal Realms is when we have that showdown between Nagash and Teclis. And you have this big fight between the two of them that's almost more of a battle of, like, emotional wit than it is just a battle between two throwing down, where Teclis really thinks he has Nagash against the ropes, but Nagash really starts hammering him with a lot of his personal failings about, like, his relationship with Tyrion and how he failed the world that was and all these mistakes that he's made. And it starts to really get to Teclis. And not only that, but, like, Nagash basically beats him. And Teclis ends up coming out on top in the end, but only just barely. And when
thanks to a million Luminarchs of Hysh, let's not count them out.
Yeah, you know, basically getting shot in the face by like 1,000 lasers. But, you know, Teclis in the aftermath of it and in the new Lumineth book, Teclis is dealing with like genuine trauma after throwing down with Nagash. And it's fascinating to see, like, watching a godlike entity try to handle that. And like, you have all this stuff of like, Sigmar is a very interesting god in Age of Sigmar because they don't pretend that he's like Jesus. You know, they don't pretend he's this, like, there are followers of his that think he's super awesome and amazing and stuff, but the setting does not hesitate to show that Sigmar has done some horrible stuff. And he also has like a massive guilt complex about the destruction of the world that was. And it's great. It's awesome because it makes them so much more interesting to follow. And it also makes it where like, yeah, there's the whole like, oh, there's no good guys in 40k, but sometimes it tends to be a little too much just because everyone just flat out sucks as opposed to everyone having nuance. And everyone having nuance is just way more compelling.
I completely agree. And I'm going to just say it here. Sassy wants to do everything and will do anything to get it Morathi is an energy I can get behind sometimes. Like, the devilish evil of Morathi is just something that sometimes you just root for. Just going to throw that out there from Broken Realms 1.
Morathi's great. And they even did a good job of like, I felt genuinely bad for her when she's ascending to godhood and she thinks that she's willing to do anything it takes. She's so black-hearted. She's so willing to commit. She goes into Slaanesh's guts and is eating all the Fire Phoenix Kings. And then she comes up to Anarian. Yeah.
I marked out so hard when Anarian turned up.
Yeah. And she hesitated. And like, it literally is the only flaw to her ascension to godhood is that she hesitated when she came up to the one man she only ever loved. And because of that hesitation, he cut her in half. And it's like, that's good. That's just good.
It's just good shit. And the whole thing about no good guys in 40k, like, and it's interesting that thing about the tower, like how they're not as noble bright as they used to be, and yada, 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 etc. I think you're right. Like, the no good guys clause works in some ways because I've held the theory for a fair while now that 40k is more about, like, well, the reason why there are no good guys is because the galaxy doesn't allow it. It's such a fucked up mess. The warp is such a fucked up mess that no matter what you do, the galaxy will get you. It got the Eldari, it got the Tau, or it's got the Imperium, it was getting the Tau, and it's just making them all horrible because it's the only way they can survive. It's not a, we're all evil and we all suck, but it's a, we don't have a choice but to be evil, because if we don't, the next guy who is more evil than we are is going to eat us. Whereas AOS doesn't have that like apocalyptic issue because it's so big, so grand, so vast, and so unexplored. Like, you're right, like Sigmar is such a character, and that chat, it's a short in Gods and Mortals. I don't know if you've read it, the collection of shorts that they did.
Yes, yes, it's very good.
That, of course you've read it, of course you've read fucking everything, you're the AOS version of Remleiz. That chat with Alarielle in that short, it just, more of that. Lots more of that.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
No, it's just like the fact that yes, there's no good guys in AOS either, but they're trying. Sigmar is trying to make up for his fuck ups. Teclis is dealing, as you say, with fucking PTSD. Like a god with PTSD. What in the hell? Like, where on else would you get that? They're still trying to do the right thing for the realms, but they're being too pragmatic about it. The Sylvaneth are like, you stay out of our forest and we'll stay out of your way. And it's just, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying.
Well, it's like,
just great. Sorry.
Nagash is a super fun character in fantasy. Like, I love Nagash, but in Age of Sigmar, Nagash is infinitely more fun and infinitely more interesting because he's so obsessed with the idea that he is the concept of death. He's not, but he thinks he is. And he thinks that he doesn't have any emotions and that he's this perfect being. But every time you get to see him in a genuine conversation or scene, especially with the other gods, it's clear how much of like a spiteful, arrogant son of a bitch he is. And which I love about him. He's
so fucking petty.
Yeah, like in the book Soul Wars, which is super fun for fantasy fans because it has Balthazar Gelt as a Stormcast Eternal in it, as Balthus Aurum. Like, you get to see a showdown with Nagash and Sigmar talking to each other. And it's amazing because they both have good points. And they're both like, there's so much interesting hurt there of that. They used to be worst enemies and then they became genuine allies. And it's this whole thing of Nagash has a persecution complex where Nagash genuinely liked Sigmar after Sigmar saved him and buddied up with him. But Nagash is so paranoid and he's so prideful and arrogant that he assumed all of the gods, including Sigmar, would eventually betray him. So he started going through the motions to prepare for the inevitable betrayal. So when Sigmar finds out that Nagash was betraying him, Sigmar gets angry and lashes out at him for betraying him. And Nagash goes, I knew it. I knew he was going to do that. I knew he was going to betray me. I knew that he was lying all this time and he wasn't actually like true to his word and was not truly my friend. But it's Nagash's fault that happened in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the elves, the petty... I know I bang on about elves a lot. Yes, I've got 5 elf armies. Get over it. But the pettiness of Nagash of like, all souls belong to me. All souls of the dead belong to me. And Sigmar goes along with that, and that's okay. And he gets them in Shyish, and Shyish is left alone. And then Slaanesh comes along. And Marathi and Tyrion and Teclis and Malarian start fishing out souls of elves that died in the previous universe. And Nagash is like, no, my soul. And he's like, they're my souls, even though they died in a different universe on Malus, which has nothing to do with him, but he still thinks they're his. The Idoneth turn up and are like, we literally will die and not give you a soul because our souls are broken and falling apart if we don't take a soul to keep ourselves alive. And Nagash is like, no, my soul. My soul. You will not have any soul. That is my soul. Doesn't matter, I'm going to get it in 20 minutes later. My soul. And then Sigmar only makes the Stormcast and steals souls because Nagash sold him out at the Battle of Burning Skies and didn't turn fucking up. So if he just turned up, they might have won the Battle of Burning Skies, or at least it would have been a bit of a score draw, meaning Sigmar doesn't have to run to Azir with his tail between his legs and have a massive guilt complex, and the Stormcast never get made, so Nagash doesn't have that problem. Sorry, rant over.
No,
but yeah,
like a lot of people wonder why I love Age of Sigmar so much, and that's it. Like the Stormcast, I didn't like them initially when they first showed up because I, like many people, looked and was like, "Oh, Sigmarines." But like when you actually get to know a lot of the characters, like they're great. Like I still think my favorite short story I've ever read, I forget what the title of it is, but there's a short story about a Stormcast Eternal who goes back to basically defeat a Chaos Horde that's like built a dread fort. A Tzeentch force has built this massive castle on the ruins of his home where he got taken from right when they were all about to die. And so he shows up and he's like, I'm here to avenge, my people who were slaughtered. We were a good and noble people. We were honest and just and noble and all this stuff. And the Chaos Lord of the Tzeentch force was a peasant who actually lived there and prayed for change, prayed for hope, because they were these underclass that were just treated like cattle, and they were abused and beaten and lived horrible lives just so the upper class could live off the fruit of their labor. And she's like, yeah, no, you are horrible people. You are monsters. Tzeentch came to me, and I understand Tzeentch is a terrible force, and Tzeentch obviously like manipulated my desire for change into something ruinous, but frankly, it's better than it was before. And you get this interesting verbal sparring between the two of them. And the thing that she keeps getting him on is he has no memories of his mortal life. Most of the Stormcast don't. They lose most of their memories going through the process of being forged into Stormcast.
Yes.
And she tells him
that story. There's a story on that. I'm going to come back to that in a second.
Yeah. And she's like, don't you find it funny how like you only remember the stuff that makes Sigmar look really good, but you don't remember any of the bad stuff? And he's like, that's not true. Like, I remember like little snippets of my family stuff. And she goes, yeah, but you don't remember that we've had this conversation 3 times already. Like, we've had this conversation where I've pointed out to you the flaws of Sigmar, and yet you conveniently forget that every time, even though that happened when you're already a Stormcast. And so you have this really dark, dynamic that starts showing up of it. The book kind of shows that, yeah, there is a lot of suspicious stuff going on with a lot of the Stormcasts, and that Sigmar is not, as pure as he likes to portray himself. There's the whole incident of when the Realm of Heavens got sealed off. There were some chaos cultists that snuck in and were trying to get
purge
rebellions.
Of Azir was brutal as fuck.
And Sigmar purges Azir of anyone quote unquote bad, even people that weren't chaos aligned, but like they had vengeance festering in their heart more than he deemed necessary. He literally just Superman laser beams all of them, and it's awful. It's maybe the right thing from like a god's perspective, but from a human perspective, it's a genocide. And it's very interesting.
Yeah, and the story that always sticks with me, it might not be my favorite, but it sticks with me, is the Stormcast who went and begged an elf sorcerer to get his memory back. And he got what he wanted, and it broke him. Yeah. Because he had to watch it happen. He had to watch his family die over and over, and he cannot forget. And he is begging for death so that he doesn't have to see it again. Stormcast with emotions are better than Space Marines in some ways.
I always like to kind of say, and I hope no one that's a fan of Space Marines takes offense to this, but like for me, it's like Stormcasts are literally just humans that have been given some godly power to make them stronger, but they're still, for the most of them, they're still fundamentally human. Now, we do have like an entire chamber of them that are basically automatons, but they're basically evil Stormcasts, and that's an interesting thing to be explored in and of itself. But like Space Marines, they're more like Xenos than humans.
Yeah, like, they are not human, and it's clear they're not human.
Yeah, it has a very different dynamic.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Space Marines are bad characters or bad to write about or anything. It's just that for the sort of literature I enjoy and the sort of characters and factions I invest in, the human element or that relatability or those inbuilt intrinsic flaws are something I can go for more rather than just, we are awesome, we are badass, we are really good at fighting. Yes, we have our own moral quandaries, but we don't deal with them correctly because we're not capable of emotion. I don't know. We could go on for another hour probably quite easily, but I'm going to get hungry and Remleiz is going to get annoyed. So I think we should probably stop.
Yes. So, unfortunately, no time for questions this week. So, if you have written a question and we didn't get around to it, please leave it again in the comment section below with the word question at the front of it, and we'll try and get to it next episode, unless Neve keeps nattering on like an old woman. But until next time.
Rambling.
Yes. Thank you very much to Loremaster of Sotek for joining us this episode.
Hey, it was great fun. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
I need to sit down with you and make a video or go on a live stream or some point, because that conversation was far too fucking fun.
Oh yeah, we can absolutely look into doing that, my dude.
So,
friends.
Until next time, everyone. This has been Remleiz from 40k Theories.
This has been Neve from Tactica Imperialis.
That's your cue, Sotek.
Oh yeah, Loremaster stuff. Yeah. That person.
And we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.